Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You're listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today's guest is Greg Accardo. Greg is a director, or is the director of the LSU, Louisiana State University Professional Sales Institute. Did you know there's a Professional Sales Institute at LSU? I sure did not know that until just a couple of months ago. Turns out that there's an entire curriculum and a whole movement across universities in the United States where there's now over 150 schools and universities that are making sales either a degree program, a concentration, or some kind of certificate program. And so I got in touch with Greg through one of our clients has hired one of the current students. In fact, she's still a student at LSU, and she's also working as an SDR at one of our clients. And she is phenomenal and just completely rocking it. And I said, where did you learn how to sell? And she said, oh, I'm part of the LSU Professional Sales Institute, and I work with Greg Accardo. I said, I got to get an introduction to this guy. And so I got to know Greg a couple months ago. We had a quick chat over the phone after getting an introduction to him, and just learned so much about how far the professional studies and the collegiate academic side of selling has come in the last 25 years since I left college. And so at LSU, Greg, in his role as the director of the LSU Professional Sales Institute, he is a chief fundraiser. He manages the institute and budget. He oversees internships and placements. He does all of the coaching for the university sales team and sales competitions, which we talk a bunch about in our conversation coming up. He also runs job fairs for students coming out of the LSU Professional Sales Institute, so that people just coming out of his program can step right into a company just like yours and begin producing right away. As an individual, Greg has received an outstanding instructor teaching award at LSU. His sales team in 2019 came in third place overall in over 88 university sales teams that competed in the International Collegiate Sales Competition. His team took third place in 2019. They've consistently finished in the top 20 at national level collegiate competitions. And he's got extensive experience facilitating corporate partnerships, relationships with universities and private sector. He serves as an industry consultant to assist and advise and oversees sales strategies and sales team development. He teaches every single day in the areas of sales, inbound sales management, sales enablement, sales technology. He's got some publications around how to sell yourself in the job search and how to land a meeting, insights from a salesman. So lots of great experience. And he's in the academic world and setting up students and thousands of students over the years to very successful sales career. So I had Greg on the show to talk about the evolution of sales as an academic pursuit, because as you'll hear in our conversation coming up, 25 years ago, sales was the thing I fell into because I was a history major and there was no other jobs. Sales was not something you thought about as a career. And over the years, that's really changed based on some of the demands in the marketplace, demands from employers and companies just like you. So in the course of the conversation, we talked about the evolution of inside sales and how inside sales has gone from what used to be telemarketing to a true sales position with sophistication and specialization. We talked about the development of marketing and the science of marketing and how that has really augmented and supported the evolution of sales and sales roles. We talked about the percentage of business majors that are now coming out of college and focusing on sales as their first jobs. Some of the other topics we talked about were these international and national sales competitions that are happening collegiately across the country every single year. And we talked about how you as an employer can get involved either as a sponsor, as a judge in one of these competitions. They're now running those virtually. Given the COVID situation, they're looking, of course, to get back to doing in-person competitions when they can, but for right now, they're moving to virtually. And there's plenty of opportunities for you to get involved that is going to give you access to this entire candidate pool, thousands and thousands of very sharp, smart, focused future salespeople that chose a sales concentration, that chose to be trained in the sales profession, that want a job in sales. And so it's an opportunity for you to get involved and get access to this talent pool so that you can get those people into your company and help grow and scale your startup. So had a lot of fun talking with Greg. I've had a lot of fun getting to know Greg over the last couple of months in our first conversation a couple of months ago and over email. And getting ready for this podcast interview. So really excited to have him on the show. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. So without any further ado, let's head over to my conversation with Greg Accardo. I love the LSU shirt that you've got going on, man.
Well, I thought I dressed the part. How about that?
Yeah, I love it, man. I absolutely love it. So I've got a bunch of notes here in front of me, and if you're cool with it, I thought we'd just kind of pick up where we left off the last time we chatted, if that's all right with you.
Yep, that'd be great.
Cool. So one of the places I wanted to start was, I always like to ask people who join the show, like, hey, Greg, when people ask you, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
Yeah. So, what do I do? So I like to think that what I do, and you always try to look for what's the best positive thing that you do. I like to think that I prepare really smart kids who are getting a business degree on how to be better business people once they graduate. And what I mean by better business people, to be more productive. We're all going to be in sales. I think if you're going to go to work for a company, even though you may not have a title that says you're in sales, you're all in sales at some point in your career. You either selling internally or externally. And I like to think that I help prepare the next generation of leaders who are going to work for companies that are going to have some skills that'll make those businesses even better.
And that's at the core is really the main reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, Greg, because when you and I first spoke a couple of weeks ago, I guess maybe it's been a little more, a couple of months ago at this point, I was surprised to hear how much there was in supporting sales. The fact that at LSU there's a Professional Sales Institute was, like, to me, I thought was, wow, this is like pretty unusual. I want to learn more about this program. And then as we started talking, you're like, oh no, there's like all of these undergraduate programs have sales curriculum, and there's a whole national and international sales competition for collegiate competition. And when I was in college, and even after college, I was selling college textbooks. So I was on campuses every day talking to business departments, and basically sales and selling was one class in the marketing curriculum. If you were a marketing major, you took a selling class, and other than that, like, that was it. Like, there was no sales. So, like, as a 46-year-old, the whole last 25 years, apparently things have changed a lot, and I didn't even know about it when it came to thinking about sales as a core part of what to teach, young professionals coming out of college.
Well, there's a good reason for that. So, if you go back in time, and I say, 20 years ago, and we'll use that as a benchmark, university level academics never really considered sales as an academic pursuit. Okay. So you had marketing, right? Marketing's been around for a very long time. It's kind of, a fixture in a lot of business schools. They have a marketing degree. You can get a BS in marketing. There's a lot of research that's connected from an academic standpoint. You have deans in these colleges of business who they're there to actually foster an environment of, probably number one is going to be research. So, sales was always that thing that people did who a lot of them didn't go to college. Okay. So it kind of had that reputation that, that's kind of more of that blue collar, not worthy of the academic rigor that a lot of people in academia at that time really considered it. But I think one of the wave of change that happened was, I think the internet was one thing that really had an impact on that. And you started to see a lot of pressure, I believe, from the business community. People like you would graduate a business school and you'd go to work for a company, and then you needed more salespeople to make your company more competitive, more profitable. But, there was not a big pool of talent to hire out of universities because these students coming from business schools, yeah, they're smart. They know how to do accounting. They know all the principles and theory of marketing. They understand financial matters and management, but they're never really engaged in sales. And so I think that was kind of the pressure began, 25 or so years ago, where you started to see the emergence of sales becoming kind of accepted in the business school. And it started small. I mean, there were only a few schools Probably you look at University of Houston was one of the first. Baylor was another one that kind of started experimenting with sales curriculum. But man, if you look at the trajectory and the growth, I mean, it's really been unbelievable. Like I think I shared with you that in 2000, January of 15, when I became the director of the LSU Professional Sales Institute, there were only 64 schools that had a recognized academic program dedicated to sales within a college of business. And that was through the Sales Education Foundation. Well, that number today is north of 140.
So you said, like, even just what you just said is like there were only 64 when you started in your role in 2015. Like, to me, that was like a shockingly high number. Now I know there's, hundreds, thousands of universities out there, but like, again, like I used to travel the country across. I mean, I've been to most major universities across the United States in all different parts of the U.S. And I've sold college textbooks, again, 25 years ago, and it just never was a thing. And I just think about myself coming out of as an undergraduate. I was a history major, and I was on track to be a teacher. I was in a secondary education program, and I thought, I'll teach history, that's a decent job. And then I realized I don't want to be a teacher. And so now I'm kind of stuck with this history degree and like either work at a museum or go back to school and get like a master's degree somehow. And other than like sales, there really wasn't anything available to me. And I happened to be good with people. And a friend of mine who is a couple of years older got into sales. He said, you should do sales. You'd be good at it. It's a great way to get your foot in the door with a big business. And then you can take your career from there. So even then, for me, I did sales as sort of a necessary evil, or I perceived it as like a stepping stone into what I thought would be kind of a real job. And like eventually I'll do marketing or product or something else or finance. I never viewed sales as a career. So here I am 25 years later, made a whole business out of it. So like to hear that there are over, what did you say, 150 or 150?
There's probably about 148. Like
148. Okay.
Schools that have a recognized academic curriculum, whether it's a minor, certificate, concentration, like we have a concentration, but that number, if you look at the growth, and I think that there's some factors that have impacted that growth. There was some research done a while back by Forrester, and I believe it was Forrester. I'm hoping I'll get this wrong, but they looked at the growth of the inside sales rep hiring. If you look at the trend analysis on that, it was unbelievable that, and a lot of it had to do more with internet transactions. So you saw this tremendous growth in inside sales reps. And that role, you watched it expand because of what technology was doing to the business marketplace. And those combined with a lot of the demands of big corporations, needing to hire more talent. You had people retiring from positions and they need to fill those ranks with qualified salespeople. And there was a gap. It was huge. And, universities slowly but surely started, changing their theory and their mindset around the whole world of sales, and then started considering it. Yeah, this is a critical academic pursuit. And a lot of things came along with that. You then started the emergence of sales research, which has really been tremendous. And I think if you look at the sales research that's been published in the last few years, not only just general sales practice, but also sales management, those findings have been very beneficial to a lot of companies.
That's interesting. So like the inside sales piece, again, like I guess I'm basing a lot of this on my own anecdotal information, but I do feel like it's relevant. Like again, 25 years ago, if I was going to interview, here I'm 22 out of college interviewing for sales jobs, if it was inside sales, it wasn't called inside sales. It was basically telemarketing. Like when you thought about selling over the phone 25 years ago, if somebody said to me, hey, there's this job available where you're going to like call people on the phone and get them to buy things, I'd go, oh, that's a telemarketer. And over the last 20 years, as we've seen, a lot of what used to even be outside sales has shifted to become inside sales. And even the jobs that I ended up having out in the field were mostly outside sales. So back then, the whole concept of inside sales didn't really exist as much as telemarketing did. And so it was like this thing, like, I don't want to like call people on the phone. But now there's, whole armies of people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing inside sales.
Yeah, and look, Scott, if you also look at the more defined roles that have evolved of roles for marketing and the roles for sales being actually separate, right? But actually enhancing and feeding each other. So before you had that telemarketer, right? Would just sit there and just robo dial. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that person has evolved into more of a an account manager, right? Someone who
Hmm.
connects with a client, helps build a relationship, explore different needs of the problems that they could help solve for that customer. But the marketing team over here, they're engaged in more of that digital approach now, where they're feeding those leads to those inside sales reps. So those sales reps then take those leads, reach out and make connection with some of those people and start building that relationship, start working on those levels of trust. And when you do that, then you can start having conversations around the goals they have in mind. What are some of the challenges they're facing today, and start looking for more ways where they can more expand their offerings, maybe offer advice, and become a really trusted source for those prospects.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that goes back to your comment about, the internet. Sounds trite to say, well, the internet changed everything. But if you do go back 20 years and think about, okay, what was happening with the internet
Mm-hmm.
in 2001? You're coming out of that first .com boom with, Super Bowl commercials and pets.com and furniture.com and all that stuff had gone bust, and getting into that second kind of round of startups back then. And that's where you start to see the emergence of some of these more sophisticated selling systems, things like CRMs, Salesforce, kind of, I remember 2002, I remember having Salesforce people come to an office at Applia, where it's an ed tech startup where I was the head of sales, and they come in and did a presentation about their CRM. And they're like, everything's online, everything's in the cloud. And I just remember scratching my head going, yeah, but like, what if I don't have access to the internet? You know, like, how am I going to get access to, like, everybody? I carried a LAN cord, like I had a laptop and a LAN cord, and you went to a hotel and you hooked up your laptop, and that's how you access the internet. There wasn't Wi-Fi. But even then, 20 years ago, Salesforce existed and they were selling and growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had systems like that allowed you to get more data in real time about customers. And then you have platforms like LinkedIn as like a basic example of where to get information about people. And now there's just a lot more intelligence that goes into the research before you call somebody. And with that intelligence as a foundation, it allows the salesperson to be, to your point, much more valuable to the phone call. It's not telemarketing as much as it's truly selling in a much more professional way. And the seeds to that were really 20 years ago. And now we sort of take it for granted. Like, I would never do a cold call anymore. I don't need to do a call. I might call somebody who's never heard from me before, but it's not a cold call. It's a warm call. They've been on the marketing list. I've researched them on LinkedIn. Maybe they've come to a webinar. The marketing team has gotten them to a point where I can call them and they already know the company and they know who we are. And it's the first conversation, even though it's not really a cold call. So that makes a lot of sense as you're describing it.
Yeah, and just look at the SaaS industry and how it's grown, and also it's enhanced its role of the inside sales rep. And there's a lot of companies out there who actually, have a more complex structure. They have the inside sales reps, then they also have the outside people. Okay, and
Yeah,
they work that system very well. They have inside sales reps that make that initial contact, and at some point they'll hand it off to a person who's going to physically go visit that customer. Okay. And
that's
so,
right.
yeah, there's been a tremendous evolution. And, you go back 20 years, look where SaaS was back then compared to what it is today. I mean,
Was there even a category of SaaS, really?
exactly.
We didn't really
So,
call it SaaS, right?
yeah, so
It was
everything
just
now is,
emerging.
is software as a service. And,
Yeah,
we don't buy software anymore. We get a sign on subscription, username, password. But companies have really, taken advantage of the technology side, and sales roles, you can compare them and just look at them. And I think probably with AI and augmentation, automation, I think in a few years we're going to see a much different landscape. You're going to see probably something you don't recognize, but I think it's an exciting time to be in sales when you consider that.
so what is it about the students? So with all of these programs all across the country that have emerged, whether it's certificate or degree or take some other sort of formal structure or concentration in sales, again, like I'll use my experience and the people around me in college. Like nobody who was in college thought about, I want to be in sales. And it was kind of like the thing you fell into if you couldn't get, the real job, right? If you weren't a finance major and you couldn't get a job as an analyst, or if you weren't a marketing major, you couldn't get a job as a marketing manager. Like, I guess I'll do sales as a foot in the door. And so sales was never like a profession that people aspired to do if you went to college. Like you said, it was kind of like a lot of people who did sales. I remember a neighbor across the street who was an insurance guy. He never went to college, and he built a wonderful insurance business for himself, and he drove a Mercedes. And I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, wow, some guy who never went to college, he like sells insurance and he drives a Mercedes. That's pretty awesome. So what's changed about the students now that are in college and saying like, I choose to do sales? Because 25 years ago, it wasn't a thing you would even think about. No guidance counselor or advisor was telling a student sales is a profession. You should think about it. So what is it that's different about students in this generation that you're seeing?
Hey, look, it's not uncommon to have a student get advised by their parents. If the student said, hey, I think I want to choose that sales curriculum, they'd be like, what are you talking about? You're going to throw away your college career on sales? And look, that's happened a lot. But a couple of things, Scott. I think, first of all, we'll go back about 10 years ago. There was some research that was done by the Sales Education Foundation. And this is what they found. Okay, 50% of business majors, over half of the students graduating from a business college, their first job was a sales-related job, an entry-level sales-related job. Now, marketing majors, that percent went up to 80%. 80% of marketing majors, their first job was a sales-related job. So if that was a reality on the ground, then the business schools had a problem, right? Because they weren't preparing these students for what the business world needed. Okay, so you might have went and got a degree in finance, or you got a degree in management or marketing. But you know what? When you got hired by one of the Fortune 500, you started off in a sales role. And there's a good reason for that, because in sales is where you learn almost everything about the company. You learn who the customers are, okay? You learn what their concerns are. You kind of get a glimpse of how the company operates, right? You kind of got a foot in both worlds. So that's the best place to bring in a new college graduate to kind of get them acclimated to the corporate environment that you want them to learn, right? You let them go in sales, let them talk to the people who are on the front line, meeting with the customers every day, so that they have that experience as they move up the chain, up into management positions. So, students recognize that. And I think also you saw the demand side starting to increase. We went through, before the COVID pandemic, we had 100% hiring out of our program. We would graduate, 80 to 100 graduates a year from our sales program. And, before the COVID pandemic, there were very few students, if not any, who would call me 6 months later after they graduated. Hey, I'm having trouble finding a job. Can you help me? That was not happening, and I had companies calling me and say, hey, we need to hire 3 people right now. Do you have anyone graduating that wants to move to Dallas or wants to move to New Orleans? I mean, they needed some new sales hires. They were willing to take them, not knowing much about their business model, and they would train them on that. But they just wanted them to have that sales kind of experience and education that was built around consultative selling. So, the students are, with technology, again, it's a small world, right? These students are very connected. Okay, they're communicating and they're sharing, experiences and Instagram posts and group me text and. And these ones who are going to work at companies in Austin or Dallas, even Denver, Nashville's a hot market right now. They're seeing all this activity, right? So it's kind of infectious, and they want to be part of that also. But, for instance, our program at LSU, so, we have about 700 marketing majors from freshmen all the way to seniors. Usually about 180 or so, or 200 of those have gone and declared they're in sales, and those usually be juniors and seniors. But any of those 700 students at some point can come into the sales program if they want to. They got to elect to. But, to kind of give you that, we're probably one of the largest departments in the College of Business at LSU. And yeah, there's a lot of activity and they see it, they hear about it, and it doesn't take much to know that, hey, I don't want to be unemployed when I graduate. I'm going to go major in something where there is a demand.
All right, we are off and running in my conversation with Greg Accardo, the director of the Louisiana State University Professional Sales Institute. So one of the things that we're talking about with Greg is how they are cultivating and developing these future salespeople and sales leaders in companies just like you. And it turns out that's one of the things that we do here at Sales Qualia is we're working with companies just like you every single day to help you ramp up and scale up your sales process. One of the things we do every single day is help our clients that are hiring on how to successfully hire and vet and assess those candidates coming in, just as an example of one of the projects that we work on almost every single day with clients that are part of our startup selling coaching program. So listen, if you're one of those startups right now that's looking to ramp up and scale up, you want to make the rest of this year strong, you want to set yourself up for next year, and you might think you want some help, then give us a call. Give me an email. You can either send me a text. I'll give you my mobile number right now. You take your phone, if you're listening on your phone, just send me a quick text and say, hey, I think I might want some help, or let's have a quick chat. My cell phone number is 415-596-0804. Send me a text. Let me know you might want some help. That's 415-596-0804. Or shoot me an email, Scott, SCOTT, at salesqualia.com, salesqualia, QUALIA.com. You just put the word help in the subject line. That email goes right to my inbox. I'll get that message. And we can have a quick conversation just to see if you're in a position for the team and I here at Sales Qualia to help you ramp up and scale up your sales process. So that's it for now. Let's head back to my conversation with Greg Accardo. Yeah, and I think I put myself in the shoes of a college student right now who's coming out, and let's say, they want to work for a tech company or a Fortune 500 company. If you just look at the availability, of like labor market, supply and demand, right? There tends to be a lot more available sales or sales related positions at a company. Like you go to any tech company right now, even with the pandemic, we have clients right now, several clients right now are trying to hire salespeople. Like we're growing. We need salespeople. There might be 3 or 4 or 5 positions, a couple SDRs, an account executive, an account manager, 4 positions open at one startup with 50 people. And there might only be 1 marketing position available at that company. And the person they want to hire to do the marketing has to have had 5 or even 10 years experience because they have to know how to use HubSpot or Pardot and how to link together campaigns and how to run webinars. It's a very sophisticated scientific process. So you just look at like, hey, if I'm coming out of college from LSU and I want to get like in with like a Fortune 500 company or a tech company, like my best chance is in sales. And oh, by the way, if I do well, I'm going to make like $100,000 a year my first couple of years. Like what other kinds of jobs can I do that with a bachelor's degree at 23 years old?
Yeah. And look, in a lot of these starting salary packages for these new sales hires, they're running anywhere from 60 to 75,000 a year right out the gate. Haven't even sold the first product yet. So that's really good money, to get started. Obviously the goal would be always to do better and grow your career. But, when you graduate college, you don't know what you don't know. Okay. So there's a learning process that begins the day you leave school and you go to work for a company, because obviously people are going to treat you different. They're going to expect different things from you. There's going to be different levels of accountability. And so there's sort of a learning curve that comes into place on that. Some students, hit that curve faster than others. But it's a process. And, a lot of times it's a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah. Well, and the same goes to like to your point about the companies that are hiring on sales. Again, it used to be I was a history major and they were hiring me based on my, promise of growth. Like, okay, this guy seems really smart. He seems really hungry. He's never done sales, but we're going to put him in this position, give him this territory, and we're just going to manage him and train him and coach him up and hope for the best. And if you've done a good job hiring, a lot of times that can be successful. But nowadays, like the pressure to perform quickly is so great, and the pressure of time is so small. Like I think about teams that we work with in our coaching program. They don't have a ton of time to train people on how to do sales. of course, they know they need to train on an industry. They might have to train on product. They have to train on the customers, but they don't want to have to train on sales on top of all of that. And they can't do it in a remote environment. So they need people with those skills, that foundation that when they walk in, like those people chose to do a sales concentration. They're not afraid to pick up the phone. They know how to do some emailing. They know how to communicate. And so the startup costs are a lot less now because that student's coming in, what was a student, now a professional, with that baseline that didn't exist before, because there's so much pressure to get production quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge benefit to those students coming out, because they decided, like, hey, I want to do this as a profession.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of hiring from a program like ours. We're gonna equip them with the basics of sales knowledge, sales methodology. They're going to have some hands-on role-playing experience, experience on the phone, experience with virtual. We'll bring them to that point. When you bring them into your shop, I'm talking about a company that hires them, they only need to teach them the technicality of the product they're going to be selling, which in our research shows that it cuts down on the expense of training, and also the turnover is a lot lower. Because then you don't have that student who graduates from college who thinks they want to be in sales. They take that sales role with a company, and then what happens 6 months later, they find out, oh, you know what? I don't like sales. So
I don't like picking up the phone.
We help them find that out. If that is the case, we're going to help them find that out early.
Yeah, it's like a filter. If somebody, if they could have gone and done a sales concentration, at the end of that concentration decided, okay, actually, this is not the thing I want to do, and they won't go apply. But the people who come through that concentration, whether it's your school or another program, and then they apply, they basically said, this is the thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And so the enthusiasm is going to be there as well.
Mm-hmm. No surprises.
So since we're talking about hiring, let's kind of reverse the perspective here, because we've been talking a lot about, those young professionals coming out of the program that want to do sales. They move into sales and they're getting hired by these companies. Let's flip it around and say, okay, if I'm a company, I'm a company founder, CEO, or I'm a sales VP, and I've got these seats to fill in my sales team. I've got these roles with SDR, account executive, account manager, customer success, anything that's sort of revenue related. How do I look at a young professional coming right out of college that, even with this concentration and the certificate and all the role plays and competitions they've been at, there's still probably some perception of risk, like they've never actually worked at a company before. So I can compare that resume that comes in, or that cover letter, to somebody who maybe has done some sales in the past and they've got 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years experience. How would you recommend somebody who's hiring somebody, or at least considering a candidate out of a program like yours, how should they be looking at and assessing those candidates in a way to give them that fair treatment, and also make sure that, most importantly, they don't miss out on what can be really great talent down the road?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I'll get that question a lot. I've heard that question from some business people before too. Let me give you my kind of take on it. And, there's a lot of people who look at this differently, but here's how I would look at it. If I were in that hiring role where I had to pick, is this a beauty contest, or am I looking for people with certain traits that really fit into what we're looking for? So number one, you need to look for recruits who have high levels of curiosity. So, and what we try to teach our students is be very curious. And what I mean by curious is be willing to ask great open-ended questions. Let the customer talk to you. Let them kind of tell you what it is they want to account.
And how do you teach that? How do you teach curiosity?
Yeah, and look, it's not easy, but I think the students get it at some point. This is what I try to tell the students when they show up. I say, look, you guys are really smart. Okay, y'all all 3.5 averages. You're doing really great. You're at a major university. Take that knowledge that you've learned in 4 years in this business school. Okay, the LSU has taught you the basis of accounting. You've taken the same accounting classes. You've taken the same finance classes, the same management, IFDS, economics. Okay, you've done that for 4 years. Okay, Now take all of that knowledge and now let's put it to use. So let's look at the typical company out there who would hire you, or look at the customer base of the company that you want to go to work for. These companies have two things on their mind every single day. Okay. It's about making money and controlling costs. It's that. That's it. They've got to be competitive. They have to make a profit, and they have to be able to manage their expenses and their costs. What is it that the product that you sell does that impacts those two things? Okay. Come to it from that standpoint. And if you can frame your thinking and your questions around how your product makes a customer more competitive, more profitable, helps them address those concerns about revenues, about costs, you're going to have them having really great in-depth conversations with you. But you've got to be a little curious, and you need to be able to listen. Now, look, listening skills, you're dealing with a generation that's wired. They're online all day long, and teaching them to listen can be a challenge. But we do that by practicing role plays and helping them. We give them sample questions, and I always like to talk about questions that get a little bit more information. Tell me more about that. How would that work for you? What would success look like? What would be your biggest concern if you tried this? Let the customer tell you what they're worried about or what they want to accomplish. And that level of curiosity comes out in that level of questioning you can do. And if you're going to train a student to go sit down and just ask closed-ended questions, yes and no type questions, that's not really going to do it for them. And it's not going to do it for the company that wants to hire them. Okay, so you want your sales force to be very curious. And how do you train it? Look, it's just like maybe training racehorses. Okay, some are going to be really out the gate quick and fast, and others you're going to need a little bit more work. But you may find that some of your slower horses in the beginning tend to be the faster ones in the back end.
So how do you, I guess as a follow-on to that, Greg, so number one, if I'm a young professional coming out of a program, I've been taught and trained to be curious. How do I demonstrate that in a job interview? And, the part B of that, of course, is if I'm a hiring manager and I've got, a hiring candidate in front of you that's come out of a program like LSU, and I need to assess if this candidate has a level of curiosity that's going to help us, convert more deals, how would you recommend people think about that?
Well, again, if I were sitting in the chair doing the interviews, okay,
yeah,
I'm going to be looking for opportunities where I can allow that candidate to start asking me questions. Okay, look, we train our students nonstop that when you go to an interview, you need to be prepared to ask some really great questions. Okay, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? That's your chance to sit there and show them how you can be curious, how you can dive in to find out what's important to them and what's their biggest concerns, and then show them how you may be a great fit for their team to help address those concerns or help them achieve those goals. So if you're a recruiter or a hiring manager and you're going to be interviewing some of these newly minted sales graduates, structure the interview to where it give them the opportunity to start asking you questions and see what kind of open-ended questions they're able to ask.
Interesting. And just doing that earlier, like I can imagine I'm putting my interviewer hat on, my hiring manager hat. I would have a tendency to sit down and probably have my list of questions I want to ask to assess this candidate. And that could go 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. And then at the end of that period, I go, okay, do you have any questions? And oftentimes I probably do a poor job of giving them enough time to take over the role, like take over the talking stick, so to speak. So it seems like one of the things I could do is just open that up earlier in the interview process. Like, okay, I've got my couple of first questions, just the baseline stuff, and then turn it over to them and say, so far, we've been at this 20 minutes. What questions do you have? And that would give me a chance to assess more quickly in the interview how well prepared that candidate is. Because if they are prepared and they've got some great questions, that's going to verify for me that this could be a good candidate. And if they don't, and they go, well, I don't really have any questions. Okay, cool. I've just saved myself a lot of time. I can cut the interview short of 20 minutes and be done. Yeah.
And look, we always tell our students, your first big sales job is going to be your interview for a sales job. So you're basically that sales job is you're selling yourself to whatever company you're interviewing with, and you're selling yourself as a solution to the problems that they have, or the solution that helps them achieve their goals. So first, you got to ask the great questions. What is important to you? Okay, how have you tried to address that in the past? What does success look like? Okay, what's worked well? What hasn't worked well? If I were able to show you how some of the skills that I have from whatever sales program I came from would help you address those needs that you right now have in your hiring, would you be interested in maybe taking this interview to the next step?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Have you ever done any retros with some of your students, like post it, like after they've gone through an interview process, they've gotten hired from either, Fortune 500 or a tech company, and heard from them specifically what kind of questions they've asked that really caught an interviewer?
Yeah, sure. And look, the reason I do ask them, because I want to be able to advise the next group of underclassmen coming up who are going to come to me, when they're seniors, and hey, look, I have an interview with this company next week. You have any advice? So
yeah. So can you think of a specific example of a good question?
Yeah, exactly. And so what I want to try to do is make them as prepared as possible. And look, I always tell them, look, job interviews are sort of it's not so much to find out about you, it's to find out what you're capable of. And there's not necessarily these, you want to, have to study and make sure you're answering the questions right. Don't worry about answer the questions as honestly as you can, but practice the questions you're going to ask them. Okay. The first
That's interesting. I want to dig more. You said, sorry, I want to ask real quick. You said that the interview is not about you. It's about what you're capable of. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, every recruiter is going to have their generic list of questions. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about a problem that you encountered and you had to solve. How did you do that? Those are all generic. It happens in every interview. So what I advise students, be honest. Don't try to make up something. Just be totally honest and upfront. Be yourself and be relaxed. In fact, there's some recent research that focused on job interviews about people who, and they had groups of candidates, and some were trying to pretend to be something they weren't, other ones who were trying to underplay it, others who just be their self. And they found that the ones who acted their self, they were honest, tended to be a lot better in the interviews. So there's some research that proves just relax, be yourself. Save your energy and save all your ammunition for the back end, because they're going to give you an opportunity to ask them questions. And this is where you get to really show off your ability to be curious, find out what's important to them. It's not what's important to you. Companies are not hiring because they just want to put somebody in a position. They're hiring because they have a problem. And that problem is that they've got personnel needs and they've got roles to fill, because they're worried about revenues, worried about expenses. What is it about you that makes you a great fit to help them achieve those goals? Be honest, tell them, and use questions to help them come to the conclusion that you would be a good candidate to take this to the next level.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. The last couple things I wanted to ask about, like when we spoke earlier a couple months ago, you were talking about these competitions, sales competitions. And I know with your program there at LSU, like your team was third place overall 2019 internal. Is it the International Collegiate Sales Competition?
Yeah,
your team was third overall.
Yeah, it's called the ICSC, hosted by Florida State. That event is conducted in Orlando, right there, in not far from Disney World. And there's usually about 88 universities from that get invited to come compete to this. It's a two-pronged competition. So it's a role play competition. In addition to, there is a separate but equally important case management competition, where it's more of a sales management problem you're solving in the case management, and two students will do that together. The role play competition, which is a B2B role play built around an IT solution, it's a SaaS product.
Okay, so it's like a simulation?
Yeah, and so those students are competing individually, and it's tournament style. So there, you have, everybody goes in the first round. If you're first or second place in the first round, you move on to the next round. Everybody else goes to a wild card. The wild card competitors have to win their room to go on to the next round. So this thing will go, and the way it's designed is really, really great because it's a real company that actually that they recruit to be part of this. But you're going up through the levels of the company the same way you would in the real world. You'll start off at a lower level manager and convince that person that to refer you to the person above them. Eventually, the last appointment is going to be with the decision maker, who's probably that's your fourth role play over a 2 or 3 day period that you've had the tournament style up to that point, and the top four will end up at that last appointment. And those top four are competing for the championship. So, and there's a cumulative level of points that get acquired over this 3 day period for your case managers, your role play competitors. And in addition to that, there's a competition. There's a cold calling competition that happens 2 months before that. So your role play competitors are competing on a phone call. Okay, they're earning points, and the same thing. They go on to first round, second round. Your case management competitors are competing in a sales management simulation, and they're competing against other groups of universities in an industry, and you have to win your industry to get invited to come to Orlando. And it just so happens we were fortunate enough last year that our students, through the whole long competition, they accumulated enough points where they were number 3 overall team in the country.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Like the level of sophistication. Like I've done business simulations as an MBA, where they kind of sit you in a room with a team, and you have like 8 hours to work through the simulation. But that was more like large scale operations management sort of stuff, like Harvard case study sort of things. And I didn't know that these competitions existed for sales, just because I didn't know that the whole level, like the level of development for curriculum.
Well, yeah. Let me tell you about the case competition. Is like this. So the 2 students who are going to do the sales management case competition. So even though they have to win their region in the simulation, when they get to Orlando that day, they get handed a copy of the case that they're going to prepare for. They've got 24 hours to prepare their presentation for a panel. And last year, the case was built around a company onboarding a new CRM platform.
Okay.
And you had to make the recommendation to a panel of judges about which CRM platform was best, why it was best, and how it was going to better integrate into their company and their structure. So, yeah, it was pretty intense. And then the role play competition was built around a software for IT security.
That's cool. So who are the judges? Are these combination of academic and practitioner people out in the business world?
Yeah, it's business people. And what the competitions attract a lot of companies that are come be sponsors, and because there's a big career fair that goes on for a couple of days that's associated with this. So those companies will bring people who will get invited to sit on the judging panels for these competitions, both the role play and the case competition.
Okay, got it. And so how are those competitions getting handled now in a sort of COVID coronavirus world? Are these online? Are the career fairs still happening? And the reason I'm asking, like specifically, like if I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's this like talent pool of people coming together to do this competition career fair. If I'm out there looking for some talent that people in my industry might not be looking to find, like most people will post jobs on LinkedIn or, Indeed.com and get resumes that way. But if I want to go out and try to recruit people like we're talking about here, how are you handling that? How do people get access to this sort of thing?
Well, so to make it real simple, it's all virtual this fall. So we are not traveling.
Yeah.
Universities have restricted travel for their students. Most, not all universities, but most. So Florida State made the decision that they're moving the ICSC event all virtual this year. So more details are coming out about that shortly. There's a smaller competition that we always would participate in this fall is up at the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire. That was going to be virtual.
Okay.
So all of our competitions this fall will be virtual format. They'll be done on Zoom. So yes, so I'm going to be working with my team. In fact, we're probably going to start next week to start role playing, getting used to the virtual format. Now, the NCSC, which is the National Collegiate Sales Competition, which happens every spring, was last April, and that one was virtual also. So we had to do a crash course in virtual role playing. We had about a 2-week period to prepare. So we're gonna get us started a little bit earlier this time. I have some new software now to help prepare these students, and so we're gonna get started on that. And hopefully, I'm thinking in the spring, if all thing goes well, in the pandemic resides, and obviously there's a vaccine, we should be traveling again and having these big national events getting back together. But they're going to be doing a virtual. They'll have a virtual career fair, ICSC. I don't know all the details yet, but I do know that both competitors, the case competition competitors and the role play competitors, everything will be done virtual.
Okay, and are those open to the sort of the public? If you just like sign up and you get access to watch this sort of thing, or no?
So I'm going to say it's not open to the public. However, I do know that my counterpart at Florida State, Pat Palantino, is very open to more companies who want to be sponsors and participate in the career fair and maybe judging, sitting in on a judging room for some of these role plays. Sure, he would be glad to have more participation.
Okay. I'll dig up his contact information as well. Yeah. We'll add that to the show notes. I'm always thinking about
it's the Florida State sales competition or international collegiate sales competition.
Okay. Yeah, like I remember like career fairs is something we used to do on campus when I was at Blend, which is a lending platform for engineering recruits. Our CTO and a couple of senior VP of engineering, they would fly out to places like Carnegie Mellon or other, tech-based, engineering-based schools and do these career fairs because they're like looking for the next wave of engineering talent. And again, like I'm thinking about if I'm out there trying to find my next career salespeople, especially if it's virtual, there's a way for me as a hiring CEO or hiring manager, if I can get access to some of this stuff, it feels like a secret pool of candidates that most people, especially in the tech world, like again, like I didn't know about any of this stuff until we were introduced by one of the people that's in your program who is, and the reason we got in touch, by the way, is because of Avery, who's just phenomenal. She's still in school, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or she's just...
Avery, she will graduate this fall.
She's graduating this fall, and she's a salesperson for one of our clients.
And she'll be competing in the ICSC too in November.
Yeah. We've worked with, hundreds of startups and lots of salespeople over the years at these startups. And like, she is by far one, like on the upper echelon in terms of like her business and sales maturity relative to a lot of people out there. And it just like, that was a testament to, that was the reason I'm like, I got to learn more about, I pinged her. I'm like, where are you learning this stuff? Because she's 22 years old. I don't even know. And she's just asking questions in our coaching calls that I've never heard before from people in a good way. And I'm like, where'd you learn this? She's like, oh, you got to talk to Greg. And that's how we got to talk, was because of her. So like, I can attest, like as a person who works with salespeople, the whole reason you and I are having this conversation is because of one of the people in your program. So for anybody that's out there looking for talent, absolutely, you should contact Greg because he's got 80 to 100 people like Avery. Then I think you definitely should be talking to Greg and also getting involved with the ICSC and the NCSC, because I think those are opportunities to really set yourself apart, because you're going to be competing as an employer for these people as opposed to those graduates, looking to you, like hoping you'll offer them a job, because they're going to have 2, 3, 4 offers in front of them, I think.
And look, that's not uncommon for the students who excel, and especially the ones who are on these sales teams representing these universities who attend these big collegiate competitions. They do get multiple offers. They'll get, we'll bring a group of alternates who are not competing. And a lot of times our alternates who are at the career fair while the competitors are in the role play rooms competing, they'll be getting job offers from companies just because they're on the LSU sales team. And, and look, it's not just LSU. I mean, you've got, the UT Dallases of the world, the Kansas States, the Florida States. I mean, they're putting out great students also, and they're teaching a very similar program that we teach. And these students are competing against each other. at these different events. So, but yeah, they are changing. I think overall, when you look at the effect that these programs are having, and it's not just the program, but it's the product that comes out, they
Hmm.
are having an impact on companies that are hiring these students.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, Greg, man, I really appreciate you making the time to spend with us
Sure.
here and just give us a glimpse on like it's almost like the future of where we should be hiring and recruiting our salespeople instead of posting just on LinkedIn and hoping that we find some candidate that's had 2 years experience or whatever being an SDR. I think there's a whole talent pool out there that,
Well,
like
Scott, I'll
as
just
I said,
mention this
I
too
know
in
for a fact.
closing. And just in closing, I'll just mention this. So, our program, like many others, we are now introducing new advanced technologies into these curriculums like artificial intelligence, conversation intelligence, video for prospecting. So we're keep moving the bar and taking this to the next level. So hopefully these students that we're producing really
Yeah.
can help companies start thinking outside the box a little bit. Video has been one of the biggest impacts I've seen so far. Obviously XIQ it's been something the students have really taken advantage of. But when you marry all these technologies up together in a sales stack where these students have this this toolbox that they can use to get
Yeah.
better outcomes, then they become unstoppable.
Well, and that reminds me of, like I said, like going and recruiting engineers at Carnegie Mellon. The reason that you go to those campuses is because those are the students are coming out and they're getting access to the latest technology. They're the ones learning the newest ways of thinking about coding. They're the most malleable in terms of because they're young and they want to learn. And it's a lot of the same way in the sales curriculum. Like you get these graduates coming out and they're getting access to all the tech, like even stuff like video. Like I know sales reps that have been doing, sales for 10 years, they're like scared of doing a video, doing like a Vidyard video or a BombBomb video in an email. And I'm like, dude, you got to like adapt with the times, right? And now you've got, a 22-year-old coming out, a Gen, what do they call them, Gen Zs now, or whatever they are. And they're like, oh, video. Like, yeah, I've been doing video since I was 8 years old. So it's like, this is like no big deal. Like, check out my TikTok account.
Yeah, TikTok generation.
Yeah, the TikTok generation. But it's true. I mean, it's like I use video all the time in my own sales process. And I just got an email back from a founder of a company. He's like, man, this is awesome. Like we're not even clients. You just taught me about something in sales that I should be doing with like a 30-second short video I've done. So anyway, dude, it's been really good having you on the show. Thanks again for making the time. We'll add all of the links that you shared with us ahead of an interview on the notes page for this. So once it's published, we'll let you know. You can share it out with your students, your tribe, everyone else.
Perfect.
Definitely want to make sure that people know to get in touch with you. Where's the best place to go if people want to learn more about your program or the people in your programs, if they're curious or if they're hiring right now?
Yeah,
where's the single best place to go?
Well, they can go to our website, the LSU College of Business. There'll be a link on there. Or you can email me. It's very simply, it's G Accardo, GACCARDO at LSU.edu. Or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I know you're active there. So
I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I check LinkedIn all day, every day. So if somebody wants to get a hold of me, LinkedIn would be a perfect place to go.
Okay, great, man. All right, Greg, I'll let you get on with your day, man. We'll get the episode out real soon.
Okay,
really Scott, good to see you. Thanks for making time, man.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cool, man. Talk soon. See ya.